webinar, and this is only for the purpose of education and enlightening the members for the various changes that has been happening in the various acts and how these simple changes have a different impact on the other act which may not be reflected apparently. So we have our learned speaker Chirag Vadhva today, but before that I would like the Vice President of the AIMTPA, Swapnil Bugdeji, to introduce and talk about the AIMTPA and the initiatives that it has been taking for the various tax consultants. Swapnil.
Yes, thank you, madam. Am I audible to all? Am I audible to everybody?
Yes.
Yes. Welcome everybody. Welcome Chirag sir. AIMTPA is a small association which has been formed in the year 2020, and main intention of this organization is to help taxpayers and professionals. By tax professionals, I mean every kind of professional, including CA, CS, CWA, advocates, and other non-qualified people who are either directly or indirectly into tax practice or any kind of practice which is related to tax compliances. So, although we are a very small footprint as of now, but I am very much honored to say that till today, whatever representations we had given, many of them had seen the light of the day. And we are continuously striving to further represent the issues as and when we are coming to know of it. And as of today, we are also sending representations to GST Council, Finance Ministry, and various state ministries with regard to GST issues in particular and income tax issues. So this is our small introduction. We are a very small footprint as of now, but I am sure that with the passage of time, we will gradually expand and grow into a big association.
Your voice is not audible. So please, sir, your voice is not there.
Yes, is it there now?
हाँ जी.
हाँ, तो ये एक अभी फिलहाल छोटा संगठन है, इसकी ज्यादा कोई इतना एक्सपोजर नहीं है, परंतु इसको बड़ा करने में निश्चित तौर पे एफर्ट्स लिए जा रहे हैं और आने वाले समय में इसको एक्सपांशन करने का इरादा है एंड वी आर वर्किंग टुवर्ड्स इट। और मुझे यकीन है कि आप सब लोगों की सपोर्ट की वजह से ये करना मुमकिन होगा और जो टैक्स प्रोफेशनल्स और टैक्स पेयर्स है उनको जो समस्याएं आ रही है या गवर्नमेंट को जो हमसे उम्मीद है, दोनों से, टैक्स पेयर से भी और प्रोफेशनल से भी, उस पर खरा उतरने के लिए भी ये एसोसिएशन एक कारगर भूमिका में रहेगा, ऐसा हम मैनेजमेंट कमेटी का इसके पीछे विचार है। तो इस इंट्रोडक्शन के साथ मैं रिक्वेस्ट करता हूं कि आज का जो टॉपिक है इस पे पर आगे हम बढ़ते हैं।
I remember for the final returns and the way we worked out around it. Later on, many other representations went on the same topic, and then we were, happy that government recognized that representation for giving the waiver on the late fees for GSTR 10, GSTR 9, and somewhere we are also getting noticed by the finance team as well, finance department as well. So with this, I request Lavneesh ji to kindly introduce Chirag sir for the today's webinar. Sir, आप म्यूट पे हो।
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome, Chirag sir. Chirag Vadhva is a qualified chartered accountant and lawyer by profession, running in practice in the name and style of Vadhva Chirag and Associate in Mumbai. He is practicing in direct tax, international taxation and indirect taxation, FEMA, corporate law, and charitable trusting in the domain of research, advisory, and representation. He also associated with the publication of Taxman Master Guide to Income Tax Act from 2000 to 2023, Guide to Long-Term Equity Share 2000 also. He's also contribution to newspaper like Economic Times and also other publication of professional interest by reputed organizations. He regularly conducts session of organizations like Naslar University of Law, Hyderabad, Chamber of Tax Consultants, etc. Welcome, sir.
Thanks a lot for the kind introduction, sir. And I'm gradually honored to be part of this organization through this platform. Since this is with respect to, helping fellow tax colleagues, I had cautiously made a choice. Instead of, imposing my views or my thoughts, I had tried to design the session in such a way that we would be kind of considering bare act, bare notification, through which we will come out with solutions, answers. So as against, it will help whoever is seeing the session, as in, how and when a view is framed. It shouldn't be that if a person says something, a person would blindly follow. There are always logics and, how things are developed, or rather, there's a concept called paraphrasing. I'll try to use it today so that, as and when we proceed ahead, more or less, what things have to be thought through in few lines of a section. A section might hardly be of 3 or 4 lines, and people write 30 to 40 pages on it. So till what extent can we extrapolate it, and how we do that? That is what I intend to do. Don't know how successful I would be, but that is surely an attempt, and hopefully it should sail through well. So I have been sharing across the screen over here, wherein you might be able to see various tabs which have been open. Specific purposes, I would request wherever it is important, I would, draw your attention towards the tab. But as of now, I would, just like to start across with a session with just giving a few brief introductions to you. See, that as you all might be aware, Finance Act 23 has made amendment under section 43B. Now, I'll give you a small gist of what the amendment is, what section 43B is itself, what do you mean by MSME Act. MSME Act, fortunately, unfortunately, had never been in much of limelight, in spite of having many favorable positions or propositions for MSMEs. It was never under limelight. If you can see, government has been trying to, incentivize MSMEs. Unfortunately, it hasn't seen light of the day, but at least the thought process has always been in the right direction. Execution, well, I would leave it up to your discretion and wisdom. But just giving you a reference, hello. Just giving you a reference that this has been the thought process. I'll just touch base on what exactly MSME has been, and then we'll move across with the amendments. So just to explain you, what do we mean across by MSME? It stands for Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises Act. It was developed way back in 2006. From that, from there till now, it has been operational. Unfortunately, it has not been used in in a very commercial manner, if I may term it to you. It is not very good to say this, but we fellow professionals are not utilizing the benefits of the act. I'll tell you, in my profile domain, sir would have mentioned, sir did mention about into research and publication. So I'm lot of into research. I check for case laws and things across that way. When I was doing my research for MSME Act, under the MSME Act, I was quite surprised to learn MSME Act, there are quite a few cases, unlike, a general perception case mein zyada cases honge nahi, nobody uses it. It is used, but it is used in combination with IBC. So these things, there's a concept called arbitration, conciliation, and then of course we have litigation. So in many cases, arbitration is being promoted. There are certain, there are various provisions herein wherein, a question would arise. If you go to MSME Council and if arbitration proceedings are incorporated simultaneously, what happens, what would prevail, this and that. So what I meant to say is, this is like a gold mine to be understood and extrapolated. It can be used to a greater extent. You need to understand how it will be and things across that way. The highlight of section 43B, I would of course give you my thoughts therein, but this thing is, it has brought some spotlight into MSME Act. The provisions under the MSME Act have always been good. It has been given a overriding effect over various other laws. It has to be given due importance. Now that we have good attention over here, I would request everyone to just in brief start getting accustomed with the provisions of this and try to utilize wherever possible. Having just briefly given this aspect of MSME, I just wanted to explain you what exactly is section 43B under the Income Tax Act. So under the Income Tax Act, you might be aware, we get deduction under section 37, whatever amount is to be paid. So that deduction is available irrespective of whether an actual payment has been made or not. So making it very clear, section 37 के अंदर अगर मुझे किसी को amount pay भी करना है, if there is a creditor outstanding, if the amount is still outstanding, but I have incurred the expenditure, meaning I have borne the expenditure, मेरे P&L में hit हो चुका है वो, so it's expense account debit to payable. If it is still payable, I am eligible for a deduction under the Income Tax Act. Under the Income Tax Act, you also get a benefit that if at all under section 145, depending on certain SSEs, if you are opting for cash method of accounting, cash basis, which can be followed, unlike in GST, pehle service tax mein you could have followed cash basis. Now in GST you can't, but in income tax you still have the benefit. If you are following cash basis of accounting, then of course it is needless to be said, जो भी expenses होंगे वो cash basis पे मिलेंगे. But coming back to this concept, income tax में 37 में, even if something is payable, you do get the benefit. However, to encourage timely payments and to discipline this act of making timely payments, incorporate the discipline of this, government under section 43B has specified certain payments. These payments you would be eligible for payment for a deduction only when you made payment on cash basis. This is what the section talks about. It is an overriding effect over section 37 and other provisions, meaning अगर 37 में आपको accrual basis पे deduction मिल भी रहा होगा, thanks to section 43B, you will get deduction only on cash basis, means if you make the payment, you will get the deduction. Now, what is the whole fuss about what amendment has been made? So 43B, it is the way it is. इसके अंदर बहुत सारी entries हैं, like interest payable to bank, that would be allowable only if it is on specific bank, if it is paid only on cash basis. Meaning, if you want a deduction, government is pushing you because you will get deduction only when you make the payment. So a businessman would be inclined to make timely payments to avail the deductions. To further emphasize, what the government has done is, government has said, if any payment is to be made, I'm not reading verbatim, that we'll do. If any payment has to be made to an MSME unit, again MSME unit, I'm usually using the word for the moment, then that would be allowable only on deduction would be allowable only when we make the payment. Now, when we make the payment, this is what has been specified, and reference has been given to MSME Act and the timelines provided under MSME Act, which is under section 15. So this is what it is. I'll do one thing. I'll just open up this aspect of what exactly has been mentioned over here under the MSME under section, sorry, what has been specified over here under section 43B first. So this is your section 43B. Sorry. So if you can see over here on the screen, the section starts with notwithstanding anything contained in any other provision of this act, means this has an overriding effect, and at the end of the it is overriding section 37 also. It reads a deduction otherwise allowable. 37 mein if you are getting the deduction under the Income Tax Act, you would not get. So they say a deduction otherwise allowable under this act in respect of. and then they start with A, B, C, D. These are various kinds of payment. Now, this is an amendment which has been incorporated. They have incorporated clause H over here. Uske baad they read shall be allowed. So it goes a deduction otherwise allowable in respect of, this is the amendment which we read, and it says shall be allowable irrespective of the previous year in which the liability to pay such sum was incurred by the SSE according to the method of accounting. So they say irrespective of the method of accounting followed, only in computing in the previous year in which the payment is actually paid by him. मतलब मैं जिस time actually pay करूँगा उस time मिलेगा. Now we read what the amendment is. They say any sum payable, mark my words, it is any sum payable by the SSE, means by the SSE, to a micro or small enterprise. They are not using unit registered under MSME because MSME का full form है micro, small, medium. यहाँ पे यूज हुआ है माइक्रो और स्मॉल एंटरप्राइज. So if it's a medium enterprise, it does not fall under this provision. Since it does not fall under this provision, you can, straight away continue to claim benefit under section 37 itself, right? And it is beyond the time specified in section 15 of MSME Act. So if it is within the time specified under MSME Act, then you need not worry. Then this provision would not apply to you. However, if it is beyond section 15 of MSME Act, then of course there would be an issue. You would not be eligible to claim the benefit. Now I'll take you to section 15 of MSME Act. If you are able to read it over here. Just a minute. So here we start with section 15. They say where any supplier is defined over here. We'll check out the definition also. Any supplier supplies any goods or render any services to any buyer. The buyer shall make the payment. They use the word shall. So specifically ये ऐसा नहीं है कि इतने में कर दो तो अच्छा रहेगा. It is आपको इतने में करना ही है. This is what the reference of the term shall means over here, right? If you may see this thing over here, it says shall make payment. So the word shall has this emphasis on, specifically it is a mandatory provision. Shall make payment thereof, I mean this is thereof, on or before, या तो पहले या उस दिन पे, the date agreed between him and the supplier. So between a supplier and a buyer, whatever date we decide, I have to make payment on that date. If it is in writing. So just to give you a perspective, what are they trying to say? See, there is instance of Indian Contract Act over here also. As per the Indian Contract Act, when we talk of a valid contract, a contract can be in oral contract also. Oral contracts are also valid. They are recognized in India, and written contract also. Over here, they give a reference. See, contract to hona hi chahiye. That is not at all a doubt. If it is in writing, they say, agar if it is in writing, then the payment has to be made, on or before. Okay. If it is not in writing, then what? See, agree to हमने किया ही होगा something. If it is not in writing, then they say before the appointed date. Now, what do you mean by appointed date? That is again defined. Now, there are two things which we'll refer across. What do you mean by appointed date, and what do you mean by supplier over here? However, there is a proviso. Proviso says provided that in no case the period. They say in no case. किसी भी कीमत पे, as we may call it that way. The period agreed upon between the supplier and the buyer in writing. Why are they mentioning in writing? Because if it is not in writing, you refer to the appointed date. So यहाँ पे they just want to specify with respect to what is there in writing, because उसी का reference रहेगा. अगर in writing नहीं हुआ, so as such you are taken back to the appointment date, which we'll just see what is given over there, right? Shall exceed, shall not exceed. Basically, they say in no case it shall exceed. मतलब 45 days के ऊपर तो exceed होना ही चाहिए. In no case it shall exceed, मतलब it shall never exceed 45 days from the days of acceptance or the day of deemed acceptance. There are 2 or 3 things. What do you mean by acceptance, deem acceptance, and things that way? We'll just quickly, try and touch base to the definitions provided. So if you refer to the definition that has been provided over here, these definitions specifically give you a reference. Just a minute, I'll just. Here we start with the definition. The first thing is appointed date. So again, section 15 में बोला था अगर appointed date अगर writing में नहीं है तो reference has to be of the appointed date. Now what do you mean by appointed date? Appointment date means the day following immediately after the expiry of the period of 15 days. मतलब 15 दिन जब खत्म हुए उसका immediately following date, the 16th date if you may call it that, from the day of acceptance or deemed acceptance. 2 words are used, या तो acceptance होगा या तो deemed acceptance होगा of any goods or any services by a buyer from a seller. You remember from a supplier. Supplier का definition will check below also, but just giving you a reference कि ये aspect होना चाहिए appointed date का मतलब. So now they explain what do you mean by appointed date over here. They say that the day of actual delivery of goods, goods or of rendering of services, that shall be considered as the date of acceptance. मतलब date of acceptance से जो 15 दिन होंगे उसके within that period you need to make the payment specifically. This is what it suggests. So you need to understand one thing. They say actual delivery of goods. Actual delivery of goods or rendering of service can take more time also. That is not an issue. So what do you mean by rendering of service? Can of course be a point of debate ki, what is happening, what not, or things like that. But the period or the timeline would start ticking only from the specific date is what I would want to emphasize over here on. Later on, it moves ahead to state that where any objection is made in writing by the buyer regarding acceptance of goods or services within 15 days from the date of delivery or rendering of services, the date on which such objection is removed by the supplier. So they give a reference over here ki if there is any issue with respect to the quality or acceptance or any other thing, if there's any dispute, you may call it objection over here, then within 15 days when this objection has been sorted. So basically a reference has been given ki itne time mein hona chahiye. Now, what reference does this have? Section 15, due to which it says, proviso says it shall not exceed 45 days in case of writing. And if it is not in writing, then it gives a reference of 15 days. So if you read the 2 things together, basically, if you read this thing together, it says any sum payable by the SSE to a micro or a small beyond the time limit specified. Matlab, if it is beyond what is specified in section 15, section 15 gives you 2 reference. One is 45 days ka if something is in writing. If something is not in writing, it throws you back to the appointed date. Appointed date gives you the reference of 15 days from the date of supply of service or rendering of from supply of goods or rendering of services. So if that is the case, आपको deduction तभी ही मिलेगा when you make the payment. So payment, if it had to be made in 15 days, you do not make it in 15 days, then you will get deduction only when you make the payment for it. So the logic is if you make the payment within 15 days, if it is not a written contract, then you would get the payment when you have actually paid. So technically what they are giving a reference is the day when you make the payment, you will get the deduction. Indirectly, what they are trying to say is the earlier you make the payment, the better you get the deduction. Now, this, if you try and read with the entire budget scheme that was introduced, government has tried to come up with various schemes wherein, the dues of MSME has been cleared by the government. If at all you would have read the budget speech also, there has been various schemes that have been, undertaking wherein, the government has assured some X 90% of your dues would be cleared within these days and all that. So this was a step in that direction. Unfortunately, if you would ask me, it might backfire. I'll explain you my reasons for that as well. Unlike others, wherein people have suggested that, this amendment is good, I have certain reservations. People have, given both reasons for this being good or bad. I have contrary opinions with respect to what people call good. I am calling it bad, and what people call bad, I'm calling it as good. But just to give you a reference over here, the other reference over here is the date of deemed acceptance. They explain where no objection is made in writing, within 15 days, then it shall be considered, then, the day of actual delivery of the goods or entering of service. Matlab, if within 15 days, I do not make a formal, complaint, then I will, the date of deemed acceptance will be traveling back to the date of delivery. Now, this was the reference point over here. Now, just to give you a specific understanding, when people or government says that, this is a very good provision, or, it is going to help MSMEs or something, I'll pose this question to you to make you understand. We'll take a first example. If we enter into a transaction, you are an MSME, I'm not an MSME, I need to make payment to you. We enter into a contract on 1st April. Technically, 45 days, we enter into a condition that, I'll make payment within 30 days. On 1st April itself, you supplied the goods or you rendered the service within 30 days, as in assuming in the month of April, I should have paid you, I have not paid you. I make payment directly on 31st March. Directly on 31st March. Matlab 30 days ke badle it has exceeded 300 days. Do you think there would be a disallowance? If you would ask me, okay, let's read the entire provision as the way it is. So under 37, I would be getting the deduction. That is never a doubt, right? Under 37, I was eligible to get a deduction. I will continue to get the deduction. Okay. So it reads, notwithstanding anything contained in any other provision of this act. Matlab, a deduction otherwise allowable under this act. I was eligible to get a deduction even for an unpaid amount under section 37. Matlab, if I accepted the goods or the services on 1st April, I had to make the payment on 30th April. I am making the payment directly on 31st March. Whether do you think this provision will be helpful or not? So the answer to that is no, it would not be helpful. Let's read it. 37, I'm eligible. So the section reads, irrespective of what is given under 37, it says any sum payable by the SSE to a micro and small enterprise, my case is being satisfied over here, is beyond the time specified. Yes, mine is beyond the time specified. I had to pay. It is a sum payable. It is not sum paid. Payable hai at that time. Okay. It says shall be allowable. Shall be allowed. Sorry. Yeah. Only in computing the income of that previous year in which the sum is actually paid. Matlab, if I paid before 31st March, it is actually paid in that previous year itself. So I'm eligible to get the deduction. So where is the whole fuss about, this is going to help MSME, this is going to do this, this is going to do that. Every micro and small enterprise, if I have to accept some money from you, I have some receivable from you, you do not pay me 200 days, 240 days. I'm not even taking the example of 45 days or 15 days. My question is, where is the question of disallowance over here? The question of disallowance shall only come, I'm again repeating, the question of disallowance shall only come when it is a payment or the services or something which has been rendered in the month of February. So February, say if you count 45 days, it will exceed March, and that will be the question. Other than that, I do not see this provision having any impact at any given point of time, because this is what specifically it says. Now I haven't given you the exact date with respect to 15th February के बाद कुछ transaction होगा तो यही लगेगा. But you all people would be good enough into it to understand what the exact date is. I'm just giving you a reference broadly that something in the month of Feb and something which is payable in the month of Feb would only be, it is only that thing which might get impacted due to this, or not even agar first Feb ko bhi hua, then also it would not be, but just broadly summarizing, something which is month end or year end payable, only those things are going to get impacted, not everything. So the question is, why has there been so much fuss around this is beneficial, this, that, and this, that. I'll do one thing. So people were, hailing across this amendment that it is genuinely great, it will help in recovery of fund. But like I gave you the example, if you render a service in the month of April and there is a delay of 300 days also, I being an SSC will still get a deduction if I make the payment before the end of the year. So ultimately, I'll just do one thing. I'll try and make you read the this thing. Sorry, I'll try and make you read the budget memorandum for this, wherein the budget memorandum, and give you an explanation what the memorandum wanted to say. So yeah, this is what the budget memorandum is. It says promoting timely payments to micro and small enterprises. It says section 43B of the Act provides for certain deduction to be allowed only on actual payment. Further, the provider of this section allow deduction on accrual basis if the amount is paid by due date of furnishing return of income. In order to promote timely payments to micro and small enterprises, it is proposed to include payments made to such enterprises within the ambit of section 43B. So they are saying ki to promote timely payment, they are including this clause H tha, they are including any payment to be made to MSME under 43B. Accordingly, it is proposed to insert a new clause H in section 43B to provide that any sum payable by the SSE to a micro or small enterprise beyond the time limit specified under section 15 of MSME Act shall be allowable as a deduction only on actual payment. However, it is also proposed that the provider to section 43B shall not apply to such payments. Section 15 mandates, 15 days and all that here they have given. Thus, the proposed amendment to section 15 will allow payment as a reduction only on payment basis. It cannot be allowed only if the payment is within the time mandated under section 15. Now, this is what has been specified. If I may use the term, what the government was intending was that, timely payments hone lagenge. Unfortunately, it hasn't worked that way according to a clear reading for it. Now, I'll just give you a reference with respect to, or amendment kya tha. Now, we had read 43B. Now, this was clause H of 43B. Now, we are just continuing. Provided that nothing contained in this section shall apply. I'm not reading this bracket word because that is the amendment. Shall apply in relation to any sum which is actually paid by the SSC on or before the due date applicable in case of furnishing return of income under section 139 in respect of the previous year in which the liability to pay such sum was incurred as aforesaid, and the evidence of such payment is furnished along with the return. What 43B meant is you will get it on payment basis. they provided one more benefit saying that, agar 31st March tak, if up till 31st March you have not made the payment, but you make the payment before the time provided under section 139(1), if that also being the case, we'll give you the benefit. Now, for this, they have created an exception saying except the provisions of clause H. Matlab, for any payment to be made to a micro or a small enterprise, you do not pay it by 31st March, but you pay it before 31st July. Let's assume you are an individual and the due date as per 139(1) in your case falls on 31st July. If you make payment on 30th June or any day or date before 31st July, still you are not eligible to get benefit of this proviso. Why? Because it says except the provisions of clause H. Meaning क्या हुआ इस चीज का simple meaning इतना ही है. What they are trying to explain you is you will get payment only when you make payment on a cash basis. मतलब when you actually make the payment. Now that actual payment के लिए, again, one thing you need to understand, shall be allowed irrespective of the previous year, if you understand this thing. So what they are saying, you will get payment when you make you will get the deduction when you make the payment, irrespective of किस year का payment तुमने कब किया. If you make the payment before 31st March, you will get the deduction. Let's assume there was a payment of 2008-9, which I am making today. I might still get, that was a hyperbole, just an example, but I was just trying to give you a reference. What they are trying to say, the moment you make the payment, you will get the deduction. Matter ends over there. It is irrespective of this belongs to which year or what. If it is not pertaining to MSME, and if you do not make it before 31st March, they give you timeline up till the due date of, due date to file your return of income. However, for MSMEs, the date is only 31st March. So let's assume instead of 31st March 23, you make a payment on 2nd April 23. If that is the case, you will get the deduction not in FY 22-23. You will get the deduction in FY 23-24. This is what specifically is meant around over here. Now, one question, one question arises is whether, in fact, I did cover this in these explanations, what I was giving with respect to example, whether this disallowance, because 37 May you are eligible on accrual basis, but if you do not pay, there is a disallowance under 43B. Whether it is only a timing difference or it is a permanent loss. Let's assume I do not make payment to MSME, to the MSME unit, micro or small unit, before 31st March. So for that year, I would not be getting deduction. But in the later year, can I get the deduction is a question. Or if that is not the case, what will happen? It will result to permanent disallowance. Now, there have been few schools of thought wherein people have made this interpretation as well. With all due respect, that is not correct. If you read, if you read the section by itself, see, if you only read this, then of course you will get the reference key, you might not get the deduction. If you read the entire section, you will get this understanding, because they say you shall be allowed a deduction only in computing, income referred to in 28 of that previous year, matlab us year mein milega in which you actually make the payment. So just to give you a reference, don't be scared. See, this was introduced so that people obey or they pay on a timely manner. But government hasn't been so cruel that, the disallowance is permanent in nature. So it is only a periodic difference. FY 22 के बदले 22-23 के बदले शायद 23-24 में मिल जाएगा. But it isn't something that you're not going to get the deduction by any given point of time. Now, having said this, I basically also wanted to give you a reference. What exactly or how do you call a unit to be micro unit or a small unit? So this is the notification. Notification SO dated 5th October 2006. and it has been amended quite a few times. Here they say, as per the latest thing, I am sure this has not been changed after this, so this is the latest one. They say an enterprise shall be classified as a micro, small, or medium enterprise on the basis of following criteria, namely. Now, this is the criteria for classification. They say a micro enterprise means you would be considered as a micro enterprise does not exceed 1 crore. Does not exceed 1 crore. So the meaning for this is even if it is up to 1 crore, because it uses the term does not exceed. So up to 1 crore, it is fine. It does not exceed 1 crore. This is important. And so they say, and turnover does not exceed 5 crore. So if in Hindi हम बोलते हैं और मतलब ये भी होना चाहिए और ये भी होना चाहिए, not the or of English. When they say and means these two conditions need to be satisfied simultaneously to be qualified as a micro enterprise. Let's assume your equipment is 80 lakh and turnover is 10 crores. In this case, क्या हो रहा है? दोनों conditions are not getting satisfied. Hence, you are not a micro enterprise. Now we go to small enterprise. They say whether investment in plant or equipment does not exceed 10 crore. Okay. And turnover does not exceed 50 crore. So you need to understand one thing, how logically this thing has been framed. They have not given you the slab rate 1 crore tak micro, 1 के ऊपर से 10 crore tak small. No, you please read it properly to understand. When they say in case of micro, it should not exceed 1 crore and turnover does not exceed 5 crore rupees. In my example, I am saying my turnover is 80 lakh, but my investment in plant and machinery is 80 lakh, but my turnover is 6 crores. So am I satisfying these both conditions? No, I'm not satisfying. So am I a micro enterprise? Micro is the smallest, small is bigger, medium is थोड़ा सा बड़ा compared to it. मैं सबसे basic definition में नहीं follow था. So if it would have been a general definition the way it is always, I would have never been able to qualify into MSME Act. But what they have done, so I'm not qualifying as the micro, right? Because my turnover has been 6 crores. Now we go one step down. They say where investment in plant and machinery does not exceed 10 crore. I'm satisfying this. मेरा तो 1 crore भी exceed नहीं हो रहा था. So I'm satisfying it does not exceed 10 crore. And they say and turnover does not exceed 50 crore. Since my turnover was above 5 crores, I was not satisfying micro. But I will now check the box for small because it does not exceed 50 crore. अगर मेरा 1 crore भी होगा, then also it does not exceed 50 crore. 5 crores also does not exceed 50 crore. 6 crore also does not exceed 50 crore. And the thing over here is, investment in plant and machinery, it does not exceed 10 crore. इन्होंने नहीं बोला कि 1 crore है तो small में, 1 के ऊपर और 10 के नीचे है, like you have your typical slab rates in your income tax, then you would be small. No, it just says it does not exceed 10 crore. So in your case, it was 80 lakhs. So 80 lakhs is smaller than 1 crore. It does not exceed. It does not also even exceed 10 crore. जब 1 exceed नहीं हो रहा तो 10 कहाँ से होगा? But the criteria is not 1 to 10. Criteria is it does not exceed 10 crore. मतलब 80 lakhs भी है, then also you are satisfying this. And that is how, you need to try and understand how it has been, defined. If they would have defined it typical as per your slab rate, you would never have been able to, move ahead. आप small में से micro में से ही हट जाते हैं, micro enterprise के लिए qualify नहीं होते और MSME का दरवाजा ही बंद हो जाता है आपके लिए. So the act has been designed for the benefit of the smaller enterprises. Smaller is a loose term, but yeah, for the smaller enterprises, so that they benefit out of it. And the last thing is, where the investment in plant and machinery or equipment does not exceed 50 crores and turnover does not exceed 250 crores. So this is the criteria to, go across or to bifurcate as to, you would fall under which limb or under which category the enterprise would fall, right? Along with that, they say any person who intends to establish a micro, small or medium enterprise may file Udyam registration online in Udyam registration portal based on self-declaration with no requirement to upload documents, paper, certificate or proof. On registration, an enterprise will be assigned a permanent identity number and e-certificate shall be given to them. So they say ये चीज आपको करनी चाहिए, करनी पड़ेगी. Just to give you a flavor of what exactly was micro, small and medium. Like I had stated earlier, and we can see over here also, medium is not covered over here, only micro and small enterprises are covered over here. Now, having understood, this aspect, I will try to quiz you or buzz you with respect to an understanding as to how do you come to know that an enterprise is a micro enterprise or a small enterprise or a medium enterprise. Now the simple thing is मुझे पता होना चाहिए कि आप लोग मतलब the party with whom I'm dealing, it might either be a micro or a small enterprise. But how do I come to know? See, today I and you will enter into a contract, right? That you will supply me goods, I will pay you, I'll make the payment to you. Now the question is, do I need to know this thing on the date of, signing the contract, or do I need to know this on the date of making the payment or something that way? When would I come to know? See, even for the officer to disallow any expense saying that आपने MSME को late payment किया or anything, he has to know now whether the opposite party is an MSME or not, is registered under MSME or not. How will they come to know whether a person is, registered under MSME or not? Or, take other example. Today, on the date of signing the contract, my turnover was, not exceeding 10 crores or 100 crores or 250 crores. On the date of receipt of payment, if you default, at that day, if you check my MSME status, it has changed. What is the time? How would you look at it if I would practically cross question you? If you want to implement it, how would you do that? So, before giving you the answer, I'll just give you a broader concept of, there's a doctrine of, there's a concept that, you cannot expect an SSE to do the impossible. Firstly, have a logical approach to say कि my business is something related to, goods, services and all that. You can't expect me to leave all those things aside and start inquiring आप MSME हो नहीं हो कब हुए कब आपका data change हुआ कब आपका characterization change हुआ you belong to this category that is typically not possible and you can't even expect. The cost of compliances would be very high. So the question is on which date do you do and how do you do it? So the answer to this is, or rather what I was trying to explain you is that becomes an act of impossibility. How would I know if, take the practical example, if I'm a large scale listed company, I'm taking services from quite a few vendors, I would not know who is registered, when it was registered. So for GST, you always ask for certificates. If, at the time of supply of goods, yes, he is registered under GST. Later on, the GST can get cancelled also. As of now, I don't think the system is that developed that you get a notification unless, your tally might show you or the other software vendor would, software might give you an indication that, GST is not valid, it is expired or cancelled or things that way. But that is not possible. Government hasn't developed anything yet. So how do you expect? The logical answer to that is nobody would expect you to do something which is impossible or which is so burdensome. This is what a logical argument is. Now coming to the specific argument over here, Supreme Court has already decided saying that the registration under MSME Act cannot be given retrospectively, meaning thereby if you and I enter into a contract and I am eligible for MSME registration, I have not taken the MSME registration. Now, that being the case, if there is a dispute between us and you want to drag me to MSME forum and things across that way, or I want to drag you to MSME forum, so firstly, you need to be registered under MSME. So what will you do when matters went out of hand or we are unable to amicably resolve? You come up with a this thing. You drag me to MSME by taking a registration. So the transaction between us had happened earlier. The dispute arose now. You took a registration and you are approaching MSME. A bigger question is, can MSME forum, this thing, can they entertain your plea? For the very simple reason, on the date of the signing of the agreement, I was not registered under MSME. The Supreme Court has clearly expressed that, this thing cannot be done. You cannot give a retrospective registration. And based on Supreme Court decisions and other decisions also, it has clearly been explained that to check whether you are under MSME or not, or you fall under which category, what needs to be seen is is your category or your eligibility or your actual registration is to be seen on the date of signing of the agreement. Because it is logical, after signing the agreement, whatever you do, you will never notify me. On the date of signing of the agreement, I can ask you what is your turnover, whether you are registered under MSME, yes, no, or something. Let's assume we sign the agreement. You are under no obligation to update me ki my turnover is 100 crore today, 250 crores tomorrow, or something like that. How will I come to know the information? And if I don't know the information, how do you expect me to proceed ahead with it? So the short and sweet answer is, with respect to applicability also of section 43B, because 43B says, अगर मुझे पेमेंट करनी है कोई माइक्रो और स्मॉल एंटरप्राइज को, अब वो माइक्रो और स्मॉल एंटरप्राइज कब बना मुझे क्या पता, वो पहले शायद मीडियम एंटरप्राइज होगा, बाद में माइक्रो हो गया होगा. There is a possibility, there is a recharacterization, or it might so happen that, पहले वो रजिस्टर्ड नहीं था, बाद में वो रजिस्टर्ड हो गया एमएसएमई के अंदर. So what do you expect me to do? Would 43B apply at that time? No, it would not apply at that time, because whatever is applicable as on the date of signing the agreement, only those things shall remain applicable, and that has to be considered. So this was just a second. Yeah. So this has been a case, just for reference, you may note for it. There are few other cases, but one or two cases I'm just giving you a reference. I've highlighted the relevant part. There's a Supreme Court decision also, that also we may check across. Just making you glance through few of the relevant aspects over here. It's an NCLT decision. So here we see what it is. We also note the judgment of Honorable Supreme Court in the matter of Shilpi Industries versus Kerala State Road Transport Corporation and others, which relates to the requirement of registration as an MSME, and which is as follows. So whatever there in highlight, it or that is a relevant aspect, and these things which are in inverted commas is a reproduction of the decision from the Supreme Court case. It says, though the applicant claims the benefit of provisions under the MSME Act on the ground that the appellant was also supplying as on the date of making the claim as provided under Section 8 of the MSME Act, but the same is not based on any acceptable material, the appellant in support of its case placed reliance on the judgment of Delhi High Court in case of T&D India Limited versus Reliable Engineering Projects and Marketing. But the said case is clearly distinguishable on facts, as in the said case the supply continued even after registration of the entity under Section 8. In any event, for the supplies pursuant to the contract made before the registration under the provisions, no benefit can be sought as can be sought by such entity under MSME Act. So they say, if there is a transaction done prior to your registration under the MSME Act, you cannot take any benefit of the MSME Act. Matlab MSME Act is not applicable. If MSME Act itself is not applicable, there would be no question of, invoking this provision of section 43B, meaning in those cases, even if you don't pay, it is fine. Don't pay as in don't pay on timely basis. I'm not promoting saying you do not make payments, but I'm just saying that provision of cash basis would not be applicable. There is no acceptable material to show that the supply of goods has taken or any services were rendered subsequent to the registration. By taking a recourse to the filing of memorandum specified under 8.1, subsequent to entering into a contract, one cannot assume the legal status being classified under as an enterprise to claim the benefit retrospectively from the date on which the appellant entered into contract with the respondent. This is what I was trying to explain. Registration cannot be retrospective. If registration is not retrospective, you are safeguarded, more or less, this would not apply to you. Provisions are not applicable. They would become applicable prospectively. Hence, whatever transactions are done subsequent to it, that would get covered. Because, I'll give you a reference to make you understand one thing. Today, what you are trying to say is, we entered into a contract and payment has come late, payment aa nahi rahi hai, and at that time you register and you try to invoke this section or you try to take benefit under the MSME Act, whether that is possible, logical or something. In this case, what you are trying to do is, you are trying to say that both the transactions of supply of goods or services and the payment is something which is considered to be as one transaction, and my transaction is not yet completed or something that way. I'll just give you one reference. Under transfer pricing also, when you have a transaction with your related party, associated enterprise, now courts have held supply of goods is one and giving an extended credit is another transaction altogether. Those are not the same transactions. And hence giving an extended credit to my AE, I am eligible or required to, charge some interest. Why I'm giving a reference is the same thing is happening over here. Me purchasing goods from you, you rendering a service to me is one transaction. And that's done. But if you are not registered as on that date during signing of the contract, you are not eligible for it, you are not eligible for the benefit. Section 43B would also not apply to you, irrespective of payment aaya, nahi aaya or something. Payment coming, not coming is altogether a separate transaction. Like in transfer pricing, it is considered that way. Extended period of credit granted to your debtors is considered to be a separate transaction compared to your, purchase and sale. This So another aspect, which you may consider, I'll share across the citation later on, and you can have a reference. In this case has been cited, which again specifically says or gives the reference that, okay, if you try and read this, another judgment of this tribunal in the matter of Nikhil Tandon versus Sanjeev Bindal clearly holds that the filing of entrepreneur memorandum and its acknowledgement is necessary for an enterprise to be treated as a registered MSME. Meaning, if you don't give me the certificate, how would I come to know whether you are a registered MSME or not? Same another High Court case. This is Gujarat High Court, Anupam Industries versus State Level Industry Facilitation Council. It also refers to the Supreme Court decision of Shilpi. Along with that, I'm not making you read the entire decision of the case, but I'm just giving you a small glance of the relevant part therein. So in this case also, if you would see across, this is what they are trying to say. See, Supreme Court has clarified that if any registration under MSME Act is obtained, the same will be prospective and will not apply to supply of goods, but cannot operate retrospectively. So they say registration law, and after that your supply of goods, yes, those will get covered under the benefit and you can take anything. But you cannot have it retrospectively. Means you entered into a transaction earlier and later on you expect that you will get MSME benefits. No, that is not possible just because you are registered. So they say, according to the Supreme Court, any other interpretation of Section 8 would lead to absurdity and confer unwarranted benefit in favor of a party not intended by legislation. Actually, the benefit over here, or one important aspect over here, is that, there are two requirements. One is of your, this thing, threshold criteria of your investments in plant and machinery and your turnover. That is one. The other is there is also a requirement to file this memorandum. Section 8 of MSME Act, what they say, that you need to make an application also. So if my turnover is below 1 crore, my investments are below 1 crore, I'm satisfying the criteria, but I have not filed that application for registration, what we call as memorandum under Section 8 of the MSME Act, I am still not eligible. So, the requirement given over here, this specific case of Gujarat High Court, what I'm referring right now, it is very valuable. If you try and read, they will give you an reference of earlier cases also, and the conclusion in this case also, which actually states that if you were eligible, or if you are eligible, however, you have not done the requisite requirement of filing of the form or something that way, you would not be eligible. And subsequently, if you file across the form, like it has already been explained by Supreme Court, you cannot get a retrospective application. So what sum and substance I am trying to make out over here is, the provision will apply only if you are an micro and small enterprise as on the date of signing of the contract. Post that, if your status changes, it does not change, or something happens, you are deregistered, that will not have an impact. The date on which, if you are a micro or a small enterprise, that is what is relevant. Micro or a small enterprise, meaning you satisfy the investment criteria, the turnover criteria, you also do the requisite thing for getting yourself registered on the MSME portal, which we read Udyam registration. You do that and you successfully get the registration, then you are eligible, then 43B would apply. If that is not done, 43 benefit people would have this question, why is it happening, how is it happening, कौन सी date को होना चाहिए. For this matter, just to stretch it across a bit more, if your category changes from micro to small later on, within the date of signing of the contract, I was micro, within a day or two I am able to increase my turnover threshold and I become small enterprise, then also this would not have an impact, because the date on which I signed the agreement is relevant. Technically, in our case, both micro and small are covered. If you want to take the example that from micro you straight away went up to medium, कि 2 दिन में आपने कोई contract sign कर लिया जिससे आप 250 crores के ऊपर चले गए, I don't know, but just giving you a reference, that will not change, because what you need to see is the status as on the date of the registration. I had dealt across with respect to permanent disallowance. I also right now dealt across with the date. Now I will specifically give you a reference of why exactly I say that this amendment is a good amendment or a bad amendment, with reasoning. People referred this to be a very good amendment, saying that MSMEs को पैसा timely आएगा. I made you understand, no, that is not the situation. अप्रैल का पैसा मैं मार्च में दूंगा, वो टाइमली नहीं होता, and still the payer is not at all impacted by that. So in that case, it's a clear failure, right? Another thing, there are two things which I'll try and explain. The first thing is, more than helping MSMEs, what I have heard from distinguished distinguished senior professionals, and which I totally abide and subscribe to, more than helping MSMEs, this will impact MSMEs. Why? मैं खुद भी एक MSME हूँ. कैश फ्लो क्रंच मुझे भी रहता है, मैं भी डिलेड पेमेंट करता हूँ. इफ आई एम मेकिंग अ डिलेड पेमेंट, there is a disallowance on my end also. The MSME gets payment late, agreed. It also makes payment late. So this is applicable to MSMEs also. It isn't that I am MSME तो जो I am safeguarded. मैं भी अगर जब पेमेंट लेट करूंगा तो मुझे भी डिसअलाउंस फेस करना पड़ेगा उस टाइम के लिए. So rather it's budget forward. It is doing more harm than benefit. Because being an MSME, even I am under fund crunch and I also make delayed payments. The more delayed payments you make, the more you lose for the deduction, the more taxes you pay unfortunately. Profit नहीं भी हो तो भी ज़्यादा tax भरना पड़ेगा, deduction नहीं मिल रहा है. So more than helping, this might be something that is harming if I would, just try to make a reference. The another most logical thing I'll try to explain to you why this amendment is a good amendment, and people have not been able to understand why. I'll make you read section 37 of the Income Tax Act. It says any expenditure laid out or expended wholly and exclusively for the purpose of the business shall be allowed in computing the income chargeable under the head profits and gains of business or profession. The first this thing comes explanation. For the removal of doubt, it is hereby declared that any expense incurred by an SSE for the purpose which is an offense or which is prohibited by law shall not be deemed to have been incurred for the purpose of business or profession, and no deduction shall be allowed for such. मतलब कोई भी चीज जो गैर कानूनी, technical broadly if you would say, they say you are not eligible for the deduction. Now my dear friends, I just wanted to make you read something on Indian Contract Act. So I'm inviting your kind attention to section 23 of the Contract Act. So this is section 23 of the Indian Contract Act. I'll just draw your attention over here to see what they are trying to say. The consideration or object of an agreement is lawful. They say object would be lawful, consideration would be lawful unless it is forbidden by law or is of such a nature that if permitted, it would defeat the provisions of any law, Okay. Now, when we read, this is our MSME Act. In this, if you read section 15, which we have read, okay, it clearly says, this has an overriding effect, Now it clearly says, provided that in no case, मतलब हो ही नहीं सकता ऐसे, the period agreed between the supplier and the buyer in writing shall exceed 45 days from the date of acceptance, right? This puts a clear cut prohibition कि इतने दिन से ज़्यादा हो ही नहीं सकता. So you cannot delay payment, or you cannot enter into a contract wherein you say I will make payment to you 75 days के अंदर or something that is not allowed. Okay, this is a clear cut thing provided over here. Just a minute. So this is section 24. I am extremely sorry for the lighter font over here. Section 24 of MSME Act reads, the provisions of section 15 to 23 shall have effect notwithstanding anything inconsistent therein contained in any other law for the time being in force. What they are basically trying to say, it's an overriding effect. मतलब तुमने कहीं भी कुछ भी लिखा हो, कॉन्ट्रैक्ट में हो, वो तो दिया हुआ ही है, और ये बोलता है कोई लॉ में भी हो, MSME will override. मतलब we enter into a contract 80 days, 60 days, 75 days, they say 45 days. Now this is a contract. If a law says तुम इतने टाइम में पेमेंट करो तो भी MSME will override. Now my simple thing to you all is every contract that you see, it might either be silent or it speaks of a payment consideration more than 45 days generally, if you understand. Now, if that being the case, if I read section 23 of Indian Contract Act, there is a clear, so technically 24 says it will override, but if I'm not following it, section 15 be violate kar raha hu. So I am violating provisions of section 15, which says maximum 45 days in a normal contract. Matlab, if I say 60 days में payment करूंगा, that is against provisions of section 15 of MSME Act. Section 23 says of Indian Contract Act that if it is in a nature that if permitted would defeat provisions of any law. मतलब if हमारे बीच का contract जो 60 days बोलता है, if that is upheld, it will defeat the provisions of section 15 of MSME Act. If that being the case, the consideration or the object is not lawful. And if something is not lawful, see, in each of these cases, the consideration of an agreement is said to be unlawful. Every agreement for which the object and consideration is unlawful is void. अगर तुम्हारा agreement void है, तो पहली बात the transaction itself is void, which is fine. I'm not even pushing on that. What I am saying is, don't you think as per section 37 explanation 1 मेरे को आपको 100 रुपए पे करने हैं, मैं बोल रहा हूँ 60 डेज में करूंगा, वो 60 डेज का पेमेंट term is violating or is prohibited as per section 15 read with section 24 of MSME Act and read with section 23 of the Contract Act, which itself makes it void. There are quite a few strikes over here. You are violating so many laws. Nobody under the world anytime mentioned कि 37 में allowable नहीं है, and which is good also. Unfortunately, this video is being shared on YouTube. I am fearful that a revenue officer might take this idea and start making additions or demands or disallowances. But there is a clear violation. So when people are saying that, which included me also, that 43B is good, amendment is bad. The 43B amendment will be very good because 43B is a non-obstinate clause. It overrides 37. So 37 में मिल नहीं भी रहा होगा अगर 43B can help you in that case. I'm just trying to give you a reference. See, 37 was there independently, बचपन से था. तो ऐसा नहीं है 43B में amendment अभी आया. What I am just giving you a reference is, if 43B is not there, there is clear-cut disallowance under 37. Now 43B has come. What 43B is saying, 37 हट जा. 43B ये बोलता है पेमेंट करो तुमको बेनिफिट मिल जाएगा. मतलब even if the payment is being made after few days, after the specified days, you are still eligible to get the benefit. And this is one of the reading, one of the interpretation, how it can be read to be understood that the benefit or the provisions are incorporated for the benefit of the MSMEs. Let me warn you otherwise also. Let me give you a cautionary note also. That is not the way it should be, or it is not 100% viable for this simple thing. A deduction otherwise allowable. मतलब now how do you read this? अगर डिडक्शन 37 में पहले मिल ही नहीं रहा है तो मैं 43B में आऊंगा क्या लेने के लिए? मतलब 43B is trying to say पहले मिलता था अभी नहीं मिलेगा, अभी मिलेगा if it is only on cash basis. अगर मेरे को पहले ही 37 में नहीं मिलता था, can I still jump over here and say whether I should get it or not? There is a lot of fortunately, unfortunately, these things are not analyzed anywhere. But what I am basically trying to give you a practical this thing is these things need not be stretched out much into. 37 benefit was being claimed earlier also, it is being claimed today also, in future also it will be claimed. It is not that someone would try to play it so smartly that they would say there's a violation under section 15 of MSME Act and we are not eligible for deduction. Things will become disbalanced. You would never be able to do any business only if that being the case. But yeah, giving you a reference, that is what it is. Whether this amendment is a boon or a curse, I would more leave it across to you to decide. But this is something that which I felt needs to be pointed out, because people haven't analyzed section 37 read with section 23 of the Indian Contract Act. There is a clear violation. Now, one important aspect which I wanted to share across at my end, or few things which I wanted to share across at my end, was, if you read over here, just a second. The word used is actually paid. Now, what do you mean by actual payment? So there has been a lot of controversies around over here. Under 43B, clause H was introduced right now. Earlier, there has been a lot of controversies. What exactly do you mean by actually paid? Now, actually pay, now, this is fortunately, unfortunately, how we are designed, or what we do. एक्ट ने तो क्लियर बोला है कि तुम जब एक्चुअली पे करोगे तब मिलेगा. अब हम उसमें भी वी आर ट्राइंग टू कम अप विद वेरियस काइंड ऑफ इंटरप्रिटेशन. So just to give you an example, I need to pay you money. I have not paid you. Instead of that, I give you a bank guarantee. I tell the banker that I have to pay him 100 rupees. Instead of me, you guarantee him. You would be utilizing that fund for some project or anything. I give you a bank guarantee, or the bank gives you a guarantee on my behalf, or for me, or something that way. Whether that is considered to be something which is actually paid is a question. If you would ask me, no, that is not something to be considered as actually paid. Actual payment has to be in the form of actual outflow. This unfortunately does not satisfy the condition of actual payment. I'll this one. Okay, sorry. So just continue. This does not satisfy the condition of actual payment, and hence you would not get. There are quite a few case laws on this. I'm not trying to drag much upon this, but just giving you few references to it. Just a minute. I'll just give you one of the references wherein it might help you to understand. These are under 43B only, but with respect to some other context. So one thing is giving bank guarantees. No, that is not considered as an appropriate form of payment, and hence it is not considered. You would not be eligible. Another thing is I have to pay you money, right? That money payment is on account of transaction in goods. Now I say trade payables ke badle you consider it as a loan. See, loan means you have given me money, I have to repay it to you. And for transaction of goods also, technically it is the same. However, specifically if you see, loan is defined in another manner. Payment for goods or transaction is in another manner. And hence in your schedule 3, if you see, trade creditors alag hote hain, loans and advances alag hote hain. What I give an offer to you is, if I have to pay to you as a trade payable, I say बस वो लोन कर ले तू उसको 12%, 14%, 18%, जो इंटरेस्ट लेना है लेते रहना मेरे से. That is fine with me. Now whether this thing, so what is happening, the transaction where I had to pay to you money as trade payable is getting squared off or knocked off, and there is a fresh transaction of a loan. एक्चुअल में तो कुछ नहीं, पैसे तो आएगा ही, कुछ भी नहीं, खाली मेरे बैलेंस शीट में मैं ट्रेड क्रेडिटर से हटा के लोन में डाल दूंगा. आप आपके डेटा से हटा के उसको इन्वेस्टमेंट, लोन्स एंड एडवांसेस उसमें डाल दोगे. पैसे तो एक्चुअल गए नहीं. Whether in this case you would consider this as an actual payment, कि मैंने actually pay कर दिया and I am eligible for deduction, the answer is no, it cannot be considered as an actual payment. I give you another example. I issue shares to you. Okay, so मेरे को ये 100 रुपीज आपको पे करने हैं, मैंने अभी तक पे नहीं किए. Instead of that, I issue equity shares of my company to you or some other thing. Now, whether that is considered to be an actual payment of my trade payable wala liability with respect to, So if you would ask me, technically, it should not be, because in this case, जैसे loan का था, loan it was considered. Similarly, debentures का भी होता है. And there has been a lot of controversy. There's a Supreme Court case of Aqua, which was, I guess, favorable, and then it was overturned by Finance Act 22, I think last year, or it might be a year earlier. It was last year itself, Aqua Supreme Court. So just giving you a reference, it is. Now, with the question of conversion it into equity shares or issuance of equity shares for anything payable, the answer as per one of the favorable tribunal decisions is yes, it will be considered as an actual payment. But I would say you need to be cautious. It would not be considered, it should not be considered as an actual payment. I'll just give you the name of the case. The name of the case is Rathi Graphics Technologies Limited. It is 64 taxman.com 65. This says that you would be eligible. There are quite a few Supreme Court decisions. It is a very vexed issue. Trust me on it. It is not something which is very easy. Giving bank guarantees. SSEs try to come up with unique propositions that we have made payment, but government or judiciary knows how to discipline them, if I would use the term that way. Now, there are two things. One is with respect to ROC requirements, and another one would be my parting thoughts on the subject and on this aspect. Now, just touching across what exactly is required under the ROC. So there are two things. One is MSME form has to be filled up, which is absolutely fine. The question should be who has to fill it, and this requirement is coming from whom. Other than that, one important aspect is that if you look under Schedule 3, I'll just open one of the this thing of Schedule 3. This is a format of Schedule 3 wherein if you see, this bifurcation needs to be given with respect to trade payables and the aging schedules. कि पैसा कितना है, क्या है, and what needs to be done, what is disputed, what is not disputed with respect to MSME. Now, the same thing, you required someone to know MSME है नहीं है कब था. So if I will give you a practical insight, whenever there is a concept called SOP, which I try to make sure that it's you have a robust SOP process. Meaning, if I'm creating a ledger in the book, any ledger, let's assume I'm creating a ledger of Chirag Limited, I should have a proper SOP even for the basic aspect of ledger creation. Ki unless these things would be there, I would not create the ledger. Meaning, PAN card should be there, PAN, Aadhaar, depending on KYC, GST, because today you do ask for GST. Just assume आपका GST registration or GST IN गलत हो गया, you would never be able to get the credit and all that. So technically, generally we ask for certificates, depending on what someone feels feasible, but you ask for their GST certificates. Many a time, in few softwares, the moment you enter a GST IN, if there is any error, it pops up, or you can check the GST IN status on online also. We do follow these things. I think the time is ripe, or rather it should have already been done, that we should ask for MSME aspect also, that whether you are registered under MSME also, we should ask for the MSME certificate. And later on, see, like I explained, nobody is over here to give you real time reporting कि मेरी sales इतनी है, मेरी sales इतनी change हो रही है or anything. And that is not even your job, your function. Today, your job is to show conduct and to help in compliance. So if tomorrow, let's assume, I assume you are a small enterprise, but you become a medium enterprise, or you become a micro enterprise, or whatever, there is a recharacterization or there is a declassification. Nobody can raise finger to you to say that, what you have done is wrong, or I should have been more cautious. I have got this information. At max, what you can do is, you can have a half yearly follow up with your suppliers to ask them whether, what they have done, this is correct, any change in the information. That is not a mandate. That is if you want to do it. But at least for the SOP part, you should get it collected, even from audit standpoint. And now, especially these things coming into income tax as well, it has become more or less very much important. And it is high time we all incorporate this into our SOPs, or we actually start using these things, make an SOP that, because, one basic thing, if you just for the sake of it, make a ledger without PAN details, right? In income tax, the rate is 20% or something. Now you will take a PAN backdated कि मतलब मेरे को बाद में दे दो, अभी तो ledger create करता हूँ. Especially with this audit trail aspect coming into picture, that doesn't help you out. Same thing, when we do a cross-border transaction or something that way, your aspects such as Form 10F or your TRC or whatever, we should, have a point to have these documentations on the day when we enter into the transaction, as against, collecting in backdate or something that way. But not digressing from the topic, this is what I just wanted to give you a reference with respect to, there is already a requirement in Schedule 3 with respect to these things. Okay, now there is a requirement, there is a reporting requirement. Now, so logically what government is trying to do is they are trying to match two things. One, I upload the data कि मेरे को ये MSME को पैसे देने हैं. The other thing, MSME, मतलब the auditor reports this data कि MSME में ये aspect देना है. So there is a section, we call it section 405, which has been incorporated of section 405 of the Companies Act, which says there are specific requirements to be given to the government, specific information which needs to be given to the government. I'll just make you read provisions of section 405. Okay. Sorry, just the reference to make you read or to show you all provisions of section 405 is, I also wanted to make you read few other aspects which have been provided therein. So, sorry. Because with every obligation comes, other aspects, if you do not follow it, what will happen, what not. So section 405 is power of central government to direct companies to furnish information on articles. Now, this is a section. Under this section, a notification has been issued. The notification makes you fill up this form that I'll make you read. It says the central government may, by order, require companies generally or any class of companies or any companies to furnish such information or statistics with regards to their or its constituents or working and within such time as may be specified. They say every order under this section shall be published by an official gazette. Official gazette means they come out with a notification, or may be addressed to companies generally or to any class in such manner as the central government thinks fit, and the date of such publication shall be deemed to be the date on which such information or statistics is made on such companies as the case may be. For the purpose of satisfying itself that any information furnished by the company in pursuance of any order is correct, the government may order, reproduction of books and this and other records to verify. Here is the important thing. If any company fails to comply, okay, it fails to comply with an order made under section 1 or section 3 or furnishes any information which is incorrect and incomplete in any material aspect, the company and every officer who is in default shall be liable to pay a penalty of 20,000, and in case of a continuing failure, for the penalty of 1,000 rupees for each day after the first day during which the failure conduct, subject to a maximum penalty of 3 lakh rupees. Now, since we have read this, I will make you read ये notification बोलता क्या है. Notification क्या बोलता है, and the other thing is what needs to be done. So this, I hope my screen is visible. Now this is the notification. Sorry. They say, okay, this notification is there. This is the order. Specified company is furnishing an information about payment to micro and small enterprise suppliers, order 2019. They say where the central government by notification are directed that all companies, now the requirement is all companies who get supplies of goods or services from micro and small enterprise, okay, and whose payment exceeds 45 days from the date of acceptance. मतलब किन किन को ये requirement है? Requirement सबको है, all companies who have accepted or who get supplies of goods or services from either a micro or a small enterprise. So I may be any company. I need to be a company. In this case, fortunately, LLP is not covered as per this direction, but just giving you a reference. So who all need to fill up this information? And schedule 3, of course, it is applicable to companies only, but this is an order issued by the central government under section 405 to give you an reference that you all need to fill up this information, and that information that needs to be filled up is for who all people? It is for all the companies specifically. Okay, now it goes ahead saying that exceeds 45 days shall submit a half yearly return to MCA with the following details: the amount of payment due and the reason for delay. These details need to be submitted to them. Okay. Now they go up with the order. This is the order. This is not specific relevant. This is the name of the form, MSME Form 1. They say that every company would have to fill up these details with respect to it. Now they say कब भरना है ये form? 31st October for April to September, 30th April for March to October. Now, my friends, one thing please understand, if you Google across various things, people say कि इसके लिए कोई penalty दी नहीं है and all that. I just made you read section 405. Please be cautious of it. And you also need to understand that there are penalties in general also under Companies Act. So please don't be under false impression कि अगर follow नहीं किया तो we are done and dusted and this and that. It firstly makes no sense to get into unnecessary litigation. It was my duty to make you read section 405. Now, if you want to take a technical view saying 405 subclause 3 or 4 does not apply to me, that is fine. But I just wanted to make you read that yes, it is specifically provided, so penalties are provided. Now you may ask me कि अगर delay हो गया तो 31st October के बाद भरा तो and all that thing. But I would not go into those nitty-gritties for this aspect. This is an obligation upon all the companies, and it would be prudent if we follow it across. However, for the sake of completeness, I made you read section 405 through which this thing emerges. Now we are just having a glance at the form over here, and this is what the form MSME 1 looks like. So this is the form. You just need to enter your specific details, not taking you to a tutorial form भरते कैसे हैं और क्या नहीं. There are instructions available, things available. I just wanted to give you a brief feel of what exactly the amount is. They say initial return of outstanding. So the total outstanding as on the date कितना है, and this is what they ask. Financial year, supplier का नाम, PAN of supplier, so that पता लग जाए कि किसका क्या pending है. Regular returns, and again they ask for outstanding as on April to September कितना है, October to March कितना है, and all that. Now reasons for delay, attachments if any, and you just need to get this thing submitted. This is the basic information that they seek to ask you through these forms. A few parting thoughts from my end on this aspect. See, like I made you explain, I never felt that this provision is having such a wide-reaching impact. Like I gave you the example, even if there is a delay of 300 days, I'm still eligible for a deduction. Just continuing that further. So if during my childhood days, or we all would have encountered that if I were a prime minister for a day, or if I was this for a day, if I am given a power that if we need to help out MSMEs, and how do you do that? Trust me, of course I would be cursed for this, but don't you all think that GST would have been a better reference for it? Today under GST you have, if I don't make payment within 6 months, there is reversal of ITC. There are two things. One is they could have incorporated something similar specifically with respect to MSME under GST only. Or the other thing, they could have incorporated simply under 37(1) saying that if you do not follow this MSME guideline, we would not allow you deduction automatically. So this is easier said than done. I'll tell you why. I just shouldn't portray it this way that the bureaucrats are fools or they do not understand these things. What basic issue is that if let's assume they make a clear law that this is what it should be. Now today I'll just give you a reference. Under GST there is a clear-cut provision that if I accept supplies from an unregistered person, RCM would apply from an unregistered person. So there are two kinds of RCM. One is for specified services, lawyer से लिया, importer service लिया, RCM लगता है. And एक है which clearly says if it is from unregistered entities, RCM would apply, but that has not become applicable. Earlier it was applicable, I guess, for a month or two, and it was withdrawn back, or rather made unapplicable. But the provision is still there. So just by a stroke of a notification, it can get reactivated. This thing is because of this. What has happened today? It is not applicable, but still people do not prefer buying from an unregistered person. So those all you who know GST, basically it is not going to impact your profit. If on 100 rupees 5 rupees is the GST, I collect 105, I give 5 rupees to government. So it's like collecting from one hand, giving from another hand. So GST does not have a particular major impact, right? If I am collecting GST, I'm paying, I'm getting ITC, I'm discharging it, that's done. If somebody is not levying GST, so instead of I just pay 100, that's it, my outflow is 100. If my outflow is 105 with GST, I'm getting credit of 5 rupees also. So just a clear reference that my input with respect to GST or non-GST is never impacted. My profit and loss is never impacted. Working flow capital might be impacted to a certain extent, hardly a month or so. I'm not getting into the nitty-gritty. What I'm basically trying to say is there is no impact on GST. If I today purchase tea from an unregistered chai wala, or unfortunately if I have to purchase it from an entity who is levying GST. Tea is a wrong example. Food and beverages, as far as my limited knowledge is, we do not get a GST, but I'm just giving you a reference. Stationery, you may assume Xerox and all those things, or purchasing a product. If you insist that I am purchasing only from a GST registered vendor, today the law is not there, but still it has created such a fear that people are only कि नहीं हमको GST वाला ही चाहिए. Same thing will happen, that people will fear. So a person who is not registered under GST is not selling substandard products, but still you would not want to transact with him. Same, it will now my fear is that, if government or any revenue person is trying to listen to what we are discussing over here, it shouldn't be that blindly they should, just make things so stringent. Because if that thing happens, what will happen is that, people will clearly demarcate. If you are MSME, I don't want to buy product from you. Rather than helping, it will retaliate back. So that is a fear, and that is a practical thing that we need to understand also. See, MSME Act is there. Hence, my first thing was, to all the fellow professionals, we need to check out this MSME Act, the cases which I was mentioning. Rarely people do check across what is happening in MSME and all the things. I am saying, courts have even held this thing that MSME Act will have overriding effect over your Arbitration Act also. And any decision you check for MSME, while I was doing my research, it was basically with respect to this arbitration, conciliation and all that. I mean to say it is a very good and important aspect. We need to be more sure about it. And of course, with respect to 43B, what I just explained, it has a limited impact. So it's not going to disrupt our life totally. That is what, I would like to express out over here. Other than thing, I do not think there is anything that is specifically pending with respect to MSME one. There is a instruction kit given by government. We can read across that. Nothing much more specific details are mentioned around with that. So, with this, I would rather, take the liberty to say that I conclude, this presentation aspect of mine. If there are any specific questions or anything or any other thing, I would be happy to, take it up or we can discuss it further.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Chirag. Continuous, almost maybe more than an hour, right? And you covered all ROC, covered, I think, I never imagined 405 will also have be covered over here and will have such a pivotal role over here. So I don't know, I have so many thoughts and questions in my mind. To be very true, you mentioned that it may actually backfire when it comes to payments to MSMEs. And instead of, becoming a relief to the MSMEs, it may, drastically create an adverse impact. But then you also mentioned about, bringing in GST as a measure to counter these problems. So is it just because it is a technology that is getting used in GST that will be, added advantage, or is it any other reason?
To be very honest, it is about the periodicity. In GST, your return filings are regular. In GST, so to be very honest, if I take income tax perspective, right, to have a continuous check in income tax, it is at the end of the year, the person awakes कि कितना tax आ रहा है, allowance, disallowance क्या है. In advance tax और ये सब है, but it is limited to an extent. But when I see from GST perspective, month on month basis, whether I'm eligible for ITC or not, or many things come. So right now there is a clear provision. If I don't make payment within 6 months, I am not eligible for ITC. Of course, many of them do not follow that also. Another, just a thought, something can be provided if someone is registered under MSME. Instead of 6 months, it should be 40 days. Or they give the same reference, should be as per section 15. The moment if this thing comes, in general, it is 6 months. If you are an MSME, I will take section 15 ka timeline, basically 45 days or 15 days. I can't say more than that because it would be conflict of MSME Act, but I'm just giving a reference. Agar aisa kuch aa jata hai, so ma'am, people would be, very much cautious कि timely payment कर देते, otherwise, mismatch होगा. And GST, you would know it better right now, because of any mismatch. There is always this word of, any show cause notice being issued, credit ले लिया. So when I'm like, people are so cautious, even with MSME, they would become a bit more cautious. I'm not, openly recommending it, but my only thing was, if the intent of the government was to, help out MSMEs, for me, if you talk for this 43B, it is like a toothless tiger. I never felt only it is an impact. Now, I've seen people taking sessions, seminars, writing on this is going to help. I unfortunately have not been able to connect with them. because my simple example is 1st April ka if I pay on 31st March, forget 45 days, I'm saying, 320 days, 320 plus 45, 365 days exact. I still get a deduction. So where is it impacting me? It is only, last 1.5 month that is going to get impacted. Now that is not such a big blow that, everything, the whole economy will get shattered and, it will, economy will run all guns blazing because MSME ko credit aa jayega and all that. See, the intent I agree, because if you read the budget guidelines also, specifically they have said they are helping MSMEs, a new scheme for MSMEs coming, and the intent has been that. But if I would be a bit blunt, it is like an eye wash, because I never felt 43B will be so effective that it is going to make sure MSMEs are going to get their dues. And like I said, like I have heard across, seniors saying it will impact MSMEs the most, because MSME भी तो payment करते हैं आगे. See, MSMEs would also delay their payments. This would
Right.
more rather than helping them get their dues. Is what something
हाँ, तो उनका वैसे भी वर्किंग कैपिटल वैसे भी ऑलरेडी so टाइट होता है. So
Very- So that is what the thing which I felt for, and hence the thought for GST. So either this was just an announcement or something to please. If in my humble thing, they would actually have wanted to create an impact, GST amendment would have been something that have caused a better effect, or something that way, as against this I genuinely felt is like a toothless tiger. Naam to ho gaya, but it's not going to have any specific impact.
But then, if you look at the GST Act, we already have a provision of 180 days. But then here 43B is intending to freeze the principal amount. GST can only, it does not have a jurisdiction to look at the commercial payment. It can only restrict you towards the involvement that has an input tax credit, or, can it go and say we will not, it does not have that level of extension.
Ma'am, because in GST, the way it has worded today, let's assume, our transaction was for 100. I'm not touching across recent amendment, but just practically saying the transaction was for 100 and there's the ITC for 5 rupees, assuming. So even if, we have done payment of 99 rupees within 180 days, that 1 rupee payment I have not done to you. So as per the clear wording, there isn't any proportionate disallowance. If I go by the literal wording, वो 1 रुपए नहीं किया, then also I would not get the entire credit of 18 rupees.
Right.
Here for that, people see what happens. Practicality is a bit separate, but as per clear reading of the law, I'm not saying this would have been intended. Ideally, it should be proportionate, but I'm just saying if it is the way it is, even for 1 rupee, a person would be forced to an extent to, make sure it happens that way, that they make the complete payment. And that is the reason I was giving reference for GST. I'm not saying that's a foolproof this thing.
Right.
Any day compared to what they tried in 43B, GST would have a much more impact. This is what I feel, especially for the simple fact that earlier, ITC mismatch was there and it continued lifelong. Now you, at least, I don't know, in a good manner or a bad manner, they have become more vigilant. So, with respect to ITC. So with this fear, at least, things would have worked. Now, how good, how bad is of course a question of, debate. I don't know whether they had thought through this thing or they will think or do not think. Practical implementation, whether that is easy, yes, no. But this was a thought that compared to what they did in income tax, GST would have created much more wider impact. We are yet to see, as in, probably when data releases, whether this amendment has made any impact or not. But in my humble opinion, it wouldn't, because I like I said, it is only going to impact your year-end payments, and that is still, just a small drop, if I would say, compared to the ocean lying across.
Okay. So the second question that we have is whether the disallowance that will happen in 43B, will it be a permanent disallowance? Because earlier if you pay in the year, you will be allowed the
It is not
amount.
just the
Your
time.
voice is not clear, Chirag.
Ma'am, I said it is not a permanent disallowance. It is just a timing difference. So,
Mhm.
never be like a permanent disallowance. If I do not make payment in this year, and if I make the payment in next year, I would be eligible to get the deduction. This query arises when you do not read the entire, as in there has been a school of thought this way. If you read the entire provision, there isn't a iota of doubt also. You would surely get the deduction. There is no question of permanent disallowance. There has always been a fear. In fact, similarly, interest related bhi hai, that if we do not make interest payments to various entities. In 2006, there was an amendment in 43B. CBDT specifically came out with a circular trying to explain that the disallowance is not permanent. It would, and जो भी तुमने interest उस time पे नहीं भरा होगा और अभी भरोगे, so how do you get it? So clearly the intent is you would be eligible to get it. It is not a permanent disallowance that way.
Another question that we have is the contract between the MSME and the customer. Does it really need to be signed and sealed, or oral agreements can work?
So, ma'am, oral agreements do work. Like we say, as per the Indian Contract Act over here, oral agreements are also valid. Is something I had learned in my childhood. But practically, if you try and see, what will actually happen, oral agreements are valid. But since something is not there in writing, that 45 days gets reduced to 15 days. So it is always recommended to have something in writing. Now, in writing, the beauty of it is nobody is asking you to get it signed, stamped, or something. Not every agreement requires you to pay stamp duty on it. Not every agreement is required to get registered. I might today, just write across. Not everything requires something to be written on a stamp paper. Not everything requires to be notarized. It should be in writing, yes. The concept of notary is it acts as a value in court and all those things. Those are secondary aspects, but that wouldn't itself make something, not being a contract. So when we go to Indian Contract Act and, Section 10 and various aspects, those are ticked, even if it is a oral contract, even if it is in writing, that is good that way.
So what I understand is if it is even on an email,
Perfect.
that will be treated as a written contract and 45 days will be
Yes.
applicable.
If we refer something with respect to Contract Act, it says there has to be consensus ad idem and all those things, ad idem and all those things. So offer, acceptance, and the moment those things get satisfied, when we write something on email that if you would have written, now this is a bit unfortunate, but if we write, I would be charging 1 lakh rupees for my services, and then the opposite party is sending across to you data, it is implied that he has agreed for that 1 lakh. Of course, it
Right.
always happens that later on they say, nahi, 1 lakh zyada hai or something. But I'm just giving you a reference. That transaction, the communication over email works across, and it would be considered to be in writing. Specifically giving reference to the, Information Technology Act, something, with respect to virtual or, something with respect to technology, those are also considered to be in writing or something. It has the same effect.
Right. Now, the MSME, like small and medium enterprise, they need to be registered with MSME.
Correct.
So where is the, point of time that we need to check that the registration is there? At the time of arrangement itself, or at the time of payment or service delivery?
Contract, at the time of contract, because if we don't have it at the time of contract, it does not help. In fact, if I give this thing as a recommendation, when we enter into a contract, recitals hote hain starting mein, party 1. So we write bearing PAN, bearing this SIN number likhte hain. बाजू में we should also write, bearing MSME registration, registered in MSME this way. It is helpful that way if you do. So it has to be at the time of contract. Or rather, if you're not putting something in recital, basically, see, MSME registration is like a government proof. तो पैन कार्ड आधार कार्ड जब पीछे साइन लगाते हैं तो ये भी एक लगा देना चाहिए. It is always helpful because otherwise you would were lost out of all the benefits from the MSME Act that way.
Right. Okay, so this is applicable not only to goods, but as well services as well, works
Yes.
contract as well, right?
Absolutely, ma'am.
It is not only restricted to
Yes,
goods.
everything it applies to, ma'am.
Right. Okay, I think we have done with the questions. Any person who has any more questions can unmute themselves and ask.
Hello.
Ji, sir.
Yeah. Hi, Chirag. Hello, Chirag.
Hi, Ajay, sir.
Chirag, my question is, does this provisions applicable to trading firms also?
Very true, sir. So basically, what it is trying to say, I being an SSE, if I need to make payment to any micro or small enterprise, now being a trading firm, let's assume trading in shares or trading in, cloths or cloth, garments, anything. इट वुड अप्लाई टू यू ऑल्सो सर बिकॉज सामने हम पेमेंट किसको कर रहे हैं क्योंकि आप भी किसी चाय वाले को पेमेंट कर रहे होगे जस्ट गिविंग यू रेफरेंस देयर इज समथिंग विद रिस्पेक्ट टू ट्रांसपोर्टेशन देयर इज समथिंग विद रिस्पेक्ट टू स्टेशनरी देयर इज समथिंग विद रिस्पेक्ट टू अ कमीशन एजेंट and you have to make payments to them automatically. I don't see there to be any exception given or provided, sir. Those will...
Because the base of this query is that trading firms were included in this MSME via a press release in 2022. There is no notification issued relating to that. And still date, the MSME Act, the section 2E, which prescribes definition of enterprises, it only covers manufacturers and service sectors. It still has not amended the Act to include trader as a MSME.
Very true. So, sir, in that respect, so if I may give a technical answer to it, enterprises, I get your point. The relevant definition over here is of a supplier and a buyer. So, if you see the definition of a supplier, it does not specifically try to mention anything with respect to whether you are into manufacturing, supplier, services, or with respect to this thing. The same query what you're trying to address with respect to trading, if I'm not mistaken, I guess there was a clarification or I was part of conversation with a official. It does fall into the part of services, sir.
Because this amendment relating to trading firms, later on it was a clarification from department that trading firms have been included for the sake of priority sector lending purposes only.
Very
They are
true.
not included for the purpose of taking benefit under MSMEs.
So, sir, to be very this thing with you, if I may just give you a reference, today being a trading firm, you can get yourself registered under the service category that way. You provided you fulfill the thresholds of your uh, uh, investment and your turnover, and you are eligible to get a registration, or rather you get yourself registered. That suffices. Now, if you are trying to say, which I agree with you, that a person is not, it is not possible to get yourself registered, I would rather have to give it a rethought. But the last time I had checked with respect to this trading, the consensus, or rather, I am unable to recollect whether I had read it or we had made a representation or there was an informal dialogue. But it was suggested to take route of see. Firstly, this is not a mandate. Let's be clear in this. Nobody is forcing you for an MSME. Yes, there are quite a lot of benefits. So if we want to be eligible for benefits, we should get ourselves registered. Now the question is, if we are unable to, what I had learned, I don't know whether how right or wrong it would be, we can get ourselves registered under the service category that way, and it works. The other thing over here, something with respect to, I'll draw back a reference to GST is, sir, हम जब GST में registration लेते हैं, they ask us about our top 5 categories on which we trade into. Now, the day I change my top 5 categories, I might be dealing today into something else, tomorrow into something else. I'm not required to, give reference to the GST officer about that change and everything. same thing goes as per over here. If I'm registered as a service provider doing trading activities, they neither check it across, this is a practical aspect, they neither check it across, neither am I supposed to, report them any change in, small activities. So with respect to trading, so the logic is we should opt for services. But if you still want, I'll recheck it across. I do have quite a good connects and contacts wherein we discuss issues with respect to policies, with respect to government officials. We make official representation, and of course, a platform through which we are discussing this can be raised through across. I'll surely check across whether that is still there or not there. If there is still a lacuna therein, we'll surely, with your help and guidance, we'll surely raise this thing across. But as far as my limited this thing knowledge goes, it is applicable, sir.
Sir, because see, but the practical problem everyone is facing is that there could be multiple business activities for an entity, right?
Very-
But what happens if I'm a trading firm?
Correct.
But earlier, what was happening before 22, when this trading firm was included, people used to take registration under services,
Very
like a
true.
job work services or anything, while actually they were doing the tradings.
Understood, sir.
And till date, even maximum of them have not revised their certificates,
Correct, sir.
registrations. So what will happen? That actually I'm not doing trading, I'm raising a bill for the trading of some particular goods, but in MSME or in micro and small, I'm registered as a service provider.
So that is what's a practically I'll tell you it. So similar to GST is your MSME. Ki if I'm registered under GST, today I'm registered under textile trading of goods or rendering of these services. I haven't mentioned something with respect to I am providing or I'm acting as a commission agent. So come tomorrow or 1 year or 10 years later, if I do a commission transaction, I will have to levy GST. Just because in the registration form I have not mentioned commission, there is no prohibition on me to do that act. And there is plus no penalty on me because there is no requirement. Same thing on MSME, sir. If you are registered as a service provider into this trading, there is no requirement to get this thing amended. Matlab, today, if you decide to do some other activity, tomorrow some other activity, there is no requirement as per any notification or rule to get it updated. If you are doing 10 activities under the MSME as per your registration form, and tomorrow you do a 11th activity, it is not mandate. Matlab, for the 11th activity also, you would be eligible for the benefits provided under MSME Act. अगर कल को 11th activity से related कोई dispute होता है, you can still approach the forum, MSME forum, and you can move along with
But
it.
actually, my question is stands still there, because it has many, you can say, phases.
So we
So
can surely
what actually is coming out regarding 43B, if I take it as a MSME as a base,
Hmm.
what will happen? I'm a trading unit. I'm not included as an enterprise in as per the definition.
We are talking
Tomorrow, if
B.
tomorrow some you can say dispute arises between the vendor and the supplier, and I suppose to go to MSME Samadhan or MSME Council, so will they accept that dispute? Because they may come out that Act has not been amended yet, and the press release that will not form any basis for the dispute solution or admission of a suit.
So I'll respond to this. Firstly, when we see from the perspective of 43B, what it is, I am an SSE. Whether I am registered under MSME or not is irrelevant. I have to make payment to an MSME, that is important. Today, now if I talk to you practically, there are two aspects. One is income tax, one is your MSME Samadhan. So if you will ask me if I am registered or I am unregistered, that is indifferent. Whether I am making payment to a entity who is micro or small. Now question comes with respect to what you are saying. It's a trading entity. Income tax 43 will apply with the help of your registration. अगर आपका registration है सही या गलत, income tax is least bothered. I'll give you 10 instances of this. income tax has no right to question your eligibility under MSME. There is a specific governing body with respect to MSME. If you have taken a bogus thing or you are right, you're wrong, that is a competent authority to question. Income tax is only concerned with one thing: on the date of signing of the agreement or on the date of the agreement, सामने वाला पार्टी अगर माइक्रो या स्मॉल है, जब मैं उसको पेमेंट करूं 43B लगेगा, irrespective of आप खुद भी MSME में registered हो या नहीं. That is one clear answer. Because you said when you are a trader that way. So you are a trader irrespective of whether you are eligible for registration or not, that doesn't make a difference. सामने वाले का देखना होगा. Now coming to your question, MSME समाधान का. Sir, if you have this thing, extremely sorry. If you have registered yourself and you go to MSME समाधान, like I said, sir, 10 services registered है, 11वें पे अगर आपका dispute है, it is going to get accepted. On this technicality, it is not going to get rejected. And still,
sir.
if you want, we can surely touch base on this thing. The platform is there. If you know, I'm not saying your doubts are not valid. I'm just saying we can research on it. If there is no subsequent notification, amendment, or anything, and the question is live or the issue is live, we can surely, with the help of the forum, make a representation or seek clarification. That can surely be done.
Yeah, last question. And that in case, like we are saying that it is possible for 43B, it is possible that bill is dated 1st of April and I make a payment in 30th September, and that will be allowed because payment made during that. So in that case, provision for interest is mandatory.
So very
as per MSME.
Yes, as per section 16, that would interest has to be paid, and further as per the provisions of MSME Act, वो interest का deduction नहीं भी मिलता, correct. But sir, I would, this is what is there theoretically, yes. Practically, sir, I haven't seen across. I'll take the example of CAs, lawyers, wherein our fees are not.
Yeah, actually, practically no one is providing interest as of now, except some very rare cases. But now the question is relevant because when we will be doing the audits,
true,
this provision has now come specifically. This allowance has come specifically. So would there will be reporting requirement in tax report or any statutory report that provision of section 16 of MSME Act has not been followed?
So to this, sir, I'll just give you a reference. 43B amendment has no relation to section 16 over here. 43B has a different requirement. With respect to our audit responsibilities, sir, it was earlier also there, it is there now also, and it will continue in future also. You need to ask the company to make specific provision for the interest. The interest also mentioned is 3 times the amount of interest notified by RBI. That technically they need to make the provision because there is a clear-cut liability. Just because government agency or the MSME body is not enforcing the provisions doesn't mean that you just walk free. So वो liability sir पहले भी थी, आज भी है, आगे भी रहेगी. We need to explain it. I haven't seen any auditor qualifying a report because
Comment on this. Chirag, to be very true, and Ajay ji, simple in the board there is always a discussion about MSME payments. Since I think last 4 to 5 years after government has gone very keen on this, and in every board it is discussed if there are any payments which has not been made to MSMEs and what is the interest provision, and that interest provision in most of the boards get discussed very specifically. Now whether stat auditor is mentioning or qualifying or not, we do ask the stat auditors to qualify. But again, getting into significance and it being a non-compliance, it has to be becoming part of the report. But again, income tax computations, possibly it is a proprietary information, so maybe the public is not aware of it. But most of the public listed boards do take care of this, disclosures and interest payments.
Correct. And I think now we have to be specific regarding that interest provision. Because of this thing, when we are checking specifically something, then we have to be more careful about the secondary provisions, subsequent provisions also.
Absolutely, and there is a MSME 1 form which Chirag also mentioned, that has to be filed by 30th of June. if I recall it properly. And that is actually certified by a company secretary who is actually filing the form, if I'm right. So if the person is not certifying the data properly, if there is MSME delayed payments and it is not getting reported. So there is a non-compliance and also non-reporting by the professionals if it is not happening. And again, the CFO of the company is equally liable for not providing the data properly to the company secretary or the chartered accountants. Stat auditor has to specifically look into it whether MSME one form has gone, and if it has not gone, any reasons why, if there is no delayed payments, or at least take a disclaimer from the company management that there has been no such cases. So we are responsible to a certain extent.
In the relevant section also, they say if you provide misinformation, penalty would be leviable. Just because there has been no case of levy of penalty, much ado hasn't given to it. But sir, coming back to the same, पहले भी था sir, आज भी है, आगे भी रहेगा. Just that we need to be more cautious henceforth.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Chirag. Thank you, Arshana.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Any further queries, or we will ask? Swapnil ji, can we have vote of thanks for such a brilliant? I'm so happy to listen to this entire 1.5 hour session. Thank you so much, Chirag. Swapnil, all yours.
I wanted to say a few things. First of all, as far as GST is concerned, I don't see any help to MSME even with that 180-day reversal rule. See, basically, a person, GST registered person, will be asked to reverse the ITC if he does not make payment, only if he is called for audit or he is taken up for scrutiny. And that is not possible because in GST, not every tax payer is either scrutinized or audited. So that provision actually is, you can call it toothless, like it does not help the cause. Secondly, the same thing may happen with income tax also. Not every assessee will be scrutinized or audited, and therefore the payment not made will be disallowed and all that. I don't think that it will happen. So my opinion about both these provisions from the first day is that they are toothless and they will not serve the purpose. Secondly, I heard the query of Ajay sir that traders are not included in the definition. For some period of time, I too had this question in my mind that traders are not specifically included in the definition. But I agree with what Chirag sir has said that they are covered under the term services. And still, if we have to delve deeper into it, Chirag sir explained that the definition of micro and small. Now, the word plant and machinery is used in the definition. Suppose I am a dealer, I am a trader, and I am into the business of buying and selling of mobile phones. Now, my turnover is, let us say, 12 crores per year. And as a plant and machinery, I have air conditioners installed in my office or my shop. So, as per IT Act, do these air conditioners come under the term plant and machinery? If yes, then my business as a trader is included in the MSME definition. This is my opinion, I may be wrong, but I think that indirectly traders are also included in this, and that should not be an issue. If some dispute arises and if the trader goes to some forum, MSME forum, that payment is being defaulted for a continuous period and he tries to go the legal way, I don't think that the definition in itself will cause a bar to the case of the trader. He is indirectly, in some or the other way, included in the definition. This is my view. And as far as I know, there was a statement by Archana ma'am that GST, because it is the technology driven, can it help to locate such cases where payments are defaulted? As far as I know, they are trying to include a column or table in the annual return where they will specifically be asking this data from you, like which customer has not paid to you within 180 days against which invoice, or whom you have not paid within 180 days, and likewise. I think that will be that will serve as a data point, and the data might be shared between two departments. These are my two opinions on this issue, and Chirag sir has very well explained the topic concept. It is an important topic, but rarely we see people talking about it, and he threw some very good information and light on that and the intrigues, etc. I am very much thankful for him for giving time and explaining on the concept. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, everyone. And this is already live on the YouTube. So you can, in case you want to revisit anything, you can always go back. And I request Chirag, in case we have any further webinars to be there, and not just shy away because the numbers seem to be less, but they will be there because the digital systems have a very good impact at the later period of time, right?
I would always be there to, help across all this.
Thank you so much, Chirag. Thank you, everyone. We can, leave the webinar now, and good day to everyone.
Patient,
Yeah.
Thanks for the
Thank
Thank you. Thank you.